to become a better entrepreneur. Looking back at the books I have read, I noticed that they fall into two basic categories: books written by entrepreneurs and books written by non-entrepreneurs. Most of the books are written by non-entrepreneurs, people who are professional authors, journalists, or college professors. While I have gotten something important from every book, regardless of who wrote it, I did find something missing. What I found missing was that down in the gutter, kicked in the gut, stabbed in the back, terrifying mistakes and horror stories that almost every entrepreneur goes through. Most of the books paint a picture of the entrepreneur as a brilliant, suave, cool business person who handles every challenge with ease. The books about great entrepreneurs often make it sound like they were born entrepreneurs. And granted, many of them were. Just as there are natural and gifted athletes, there are natural and gifted entrepreneurs. And most books are written about such people. Books on entrepreneurship written by college professors have a different flavor. College professors tend to boil the subject to the bone, leaving only the static facts or findings. I find reading such technically correct books difficult because the reading is often boring. There is no meat left, nothing juicy, just the bones. How this book is different. This is a book about entrepreneurship written by an entrepreneur who has experienced the ups and downs, the successes and failures of the real world. Today, the Rich Dad Company is an international business with products in 42 different languages, doing business in over 55 countries. But it all started as a company that my wife Kim and I started in 1997. Our initial investment was $1,500. My first book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has been on the New York Times bestseller list for over 4.5 years, an accomplishment shared by only 3 other books. Maybe, as you listen to this book, it will still be on the list. Rather than tell you how smart I am at business, which I am not, I thought it better to write a different type of book on entrepreneurship. Rather than tell you how I brilliantly sailed over the tallest peaks and made millions, I thought you might learn more from how I dug many deep holes, fell into them, and then had to dig my way out. Rather than tell you about all my successes, I believe you will learn more from my failures. Why write about failures? Many people do not become entrepreneurs because they are afraid of failing. By writing about the things many people are afraid of, I hope to help you better decide if becoming an entrepreneur is for you. My intent is not to frighten you off. My intent is to provide a little real-world insight on the ups and downs of the process of becoming an entrepreneur. Another reason for writing about failures is that humans are designed to learn by making mistakes. We learn to walk by first falling down and then trying again. We learn to ride a bicycle by falling off and then trying again. If we had never risked falling, we would go through life crawling like caterpillars. One of the missing elements I have found in reading many of the books about entrepreneurship, especially those written by college professors, is that they do not go into the emotional trials and tribulations an entrepreneur goes through. They do not discuss what happens to entrepreneurs emotionally when the business fails, when they run out of money, when they have to let employees go, and when their investors and creditors come after them. How would most college professors know how a failing entrepreneur feels? How would they know, since a steady paycheck, tenure, always knowing the right answers, and never making mistakes are highly prized in the academic world? Again, it's all a matter of training. In the late 1980s, I was invited to do a talk on entrepreneurship at Columbia University. Rather than talk about my successes, I talked about my failures and how much I learned from my mistakes. The young audience asked a lot of questions and seemed genuinely interested in the ups and downs of becoming an entrepreneur. I talked about the fears we all face when starting a business and how I faced those fears. I shared with them some of the more stupid mistakes I made and how those mistakes later became valuable lessons I would never have learned if I had not made the mistakes. I talked about the pain of having to shut a business down and lay people off because of my incompetence. I also shared with them how all my mistakes eventually made me a better entrepreneur, very rich, and, most important, financially free, never needing a job again. All in all, I thought it was an objective and realistic talk on the process of becoming an entrepreneur. A few weeks later, I found out that the faculty member who had invited me to speak at the university was called into her department head's office and reprimanded. His final words to her were, "We do not allow failures to speak at Columbia." What is an entrepreneur? Now that we have torn into college professors, it is time to give them some credit. One of the better definitions of an entrepreneur is from Howard H. Stevenson, a professor at Harvard University. He says, entrepreneurship is an approach to management that we define as follows: the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. In my opinion, this is one of the most brilliant definitions of what an entrepreneur is. It is bare bones and brilliant. The power of excuses. Many people want to become entrepreneurs, but always have some excuse for why they do not quit their job. Excuses such as, "I don't have the money. I can't quit my job because I have kids to support. I don't have any contacts. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the time. I'm too busy. I can't find anyone who wants to help me. It takes too long to build a business. I'm afraid building a business is too risky for me. I don't like dealing with employees. I'm too old." The friend who gave me this article by Professor Stevenson said, "Any 2-year-old is an expert at making excuses. The reason most people who want to become entrepreneurs remain employees is that they have some excuse that keeps them from quitting their job and taking that leap of faith. For many people, the power of their excuse is more powerful than their dreams." Entrepreneurs are different. Mr. Stevenson had many other bare-bone gems in his article, especially when he compared promoters, entrepreneurs, to trustees, employees, as he labels them. A few of these gems of comparison are, when it comes to strategic orientation, promoter, driven by perception of opportunity, trustee, driven by control of resources. In other words, entrepreneurs are always looking for the opportunity without much regard to whether they have resources. Employee-type persons focus on what resources they have or do not have, which is why so many people say, "How can I start my business? I don't have the money." An entrepreneur would say, "Tie up the deal and then we'll find the money." This difference in mindsets is a very big difference between an employee and an entrepreneur. This is also why my poor dad often said, "I can't afford it." Being an employee, he looked at his resources. Those of you who have read or listened to my other books know that my rich dad forbade his son and me to ever say, "I can't afford it." Instead, he taught us to look at opportunities and ask, "How can I afford it?" He was an entrepreneur. When it comes to management structure, promoter, flat with multiple informal networks. Trustee, formalized hierarchy with multiple tiers. In other words, an entrepreneur will keep the organization small and lean, using cooperative relationships with strategic partners to grow the business. Employees want to build a hierarchy, which means a chain of command with them at the top. This is their concept of building an empire. An entrepreneur will grow the organization horizontally, which means outsourcing rather than bringing the work in-house. An employee wants to grow the organization vertically, which means hiring more employees. Formal organizational charts are very important to employees climbing the corporate ladder. In this book, you will find out how the Rich Dad Company stayed small yet grew big by using strong strategic partnerships and major publishers throughout the world. We decided to grow in this manner because it cost us less time, people, and money. We could grow faster, grow bigger, become very profitable, have a global presence, and yet remain small. We used other people's money and resources to grow the business. This book will explain how and why we did it that way. When it comes to reward philosophy, promoter, value-driven, performance-based, team-oriented. Trustee, security-driven, resource-based, job promotion-oriented. In simple terms, employees want job security with a strong company, a steady paycheck, and the opportunity for promotion, a chance to climb the corporate ladder. Many employees consider a promotion and title more important than money. I know my poor dad did. He loved his title, Superintendent of Public Education, even though he was not paid much. The entrepreneur doesn't want to climb the corporate ladder. He or she wants to own the corporate ladder. An entrepreneur is not driven by a paycheck, but by results of the team. Also, as Howard Stevenson states, many entrepreneurs start a business because they have